The room where he lost power. The room was silent. Not the comfortable kind of silence, the dangerous kind. A long wooden table, 12 men in tailored suits, glass walls overlooking a city that never slept. The air smelled like money and quiet aggression. At the end of the table sat Daniel, 32 years old, brilliant, talented, self-made, and right now, losing power. Across from him sat Victor, older, calm, unshakable, the kind of man who didn't speak often, but when he did, everyone leaned in. Daniel had just finished presenting his strategy. It was solid, backed by data, structured, impressive. But then came the question. "Why did you choose this direction?" Victor asked softly. It wasn't an attack, it was bait. Daniel didn't see it. He leaned forward. "Well, I thought it would be better because if you look at last quarter's numbers and compare them to market trends and considering the previous campaign underperformed due to..." He kept going, explaining, defending, justifying. 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 9 minutes. When he finally stopped, the energy in the room had shifted. He had not gained clarity. He had lost authority. Victor simply nodded once and said, "Noted." That was it. Meeting adjourned. Decision postponed. Power transferred. Daniel walked out thinking he had clarified his position. What he didn't realize was this. The moment you start explaining yourself too much, you signal doubt, and doubt kills power. The hidden psychology of explanation. Most people believe explanation equals intelligence, but in power dynamics, explanation often equals insecurity. Let's break this psychologically. When someone explains excessively, the subconscious message sent is, "I need you to approve me. I'm afraid you misunderstood. I need to convince you. Please validate my choice." That is not authority. That is negotiation for status. Powerful people rarely over-explain because they operate from internal certainty. When a decision comes from strength, it is stated, not justified. And this is where most ambitious people destroy their leverage. They think logic wins rooms, but perception wins rooms, and perception is emotional. Why explaining signals weakness? To understand this fully, you must understand something brutal about human psychology. Humans do not respect logic. They respect certainty. Certainty feels safe. Certainty feels dominant. Certainty feels like leadership. When you over-explain, 3 things happen. 1. You reveal internal conflict. If you were completely sure, you wouldn't need to defend it emotionally. Excess explanation tells the room, there is doubt inside me. Even if your idea is correct, doubt weakens its weight. 2. You lower your status. In every social interaction, there is a silent status negotiation. High-status individuals state. Low-status individuals justify. Watch carefully in any meeting, argument, or negotiation. The person explaining more is usually the one trying to protect their position. The person speaking less, they already believe they own it. 3. You invite more attacks. When you explain too much, you expose more angles for criticism. You give ammunition. You open doors that didn't need to exist. And psychologically, when predators sense insecurity, they test it, not consciously, but instinctively. Machiavelli's observation of courts. In Renaissance courts, survival depended on perception. One wrong impression could end influence. One wrong tone could invite betrayal. Machiavelli observed something dangerous. Princes who explained themselves too much appeared unsure, and unsure leaders were replaced. He understood a harsh truth. Power is maintained not just by action, but by image. If you look uncertain, You become uncertain in the eyes of others, and in politics, perception is reality. The story of Elena. Elena was brilliant, strategy consultant, razor-sharp mind, flawless execution. But she had one flaw. She needed to be understood. Every time she made a decision, she explained it. Every time someone questioned her, she clarified further. Every time someone doubted her, she defended. Her intentions were pure. She believed transparency built trust. But here's what actually happened. Her colleagues began challenging her more often, not because she was wrong, but because she reacted. And reaction signals leverage. One day, a junior associate openly criticized her proposal. She calmly dismantled his argument with facts. Then she kept explaining. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. After the meeting, a senior partner pulled her aside. He said something that changed her career. "You're always right, but you speak like you're trying to convince children. Leaders don't convince, they decide." That day, she changed one habit. She stopped explaining beyond one sentence. If questioned further, she responded, "I've considered the variables." Silence, and waited. Something shifted. The room began to lean toward her instead of testing her. She didn't become smarter. She became harder to move, and hardness attracts respect. The fear behind explanation. Why do we explain ourselves? Because we fear being misunderstood, being disliked, being rejected, being seen as wrong, losing approval. Explanation is often emotional self-protection disguised as clarity. But here's the paradox. The more you seek approval through explanation, the less respect you receive. Respect is given to those who appear emotionally independent. When you don't need validation, you look powerful. When you don't rush to defend, you look stable. When you let silence do the work, you look dangerous. Silence as a weapon. Silence is uncomfortable, and that's exactly why it works. When someone challenges you and you respond briefly, then stop talking, the pressure transfers. Now they must fill the gap. Now they must justify. Now they must defend. You shift the psychological burden. Silence communicates, "I am not shaken," and emotional stability under pressure is the core of dominance. The corporate experiment. In a leadership workshop, an experiment was conducted. Two groups presented the same proposal. Group A was instructed to answer every question in detail. Group B was instructed to respond in one sentence and pause. The results? Group B was rated as more confident, more competent, more leadership-ready, more trustworthy, despite giving less information. Why? Because brevity implies certainty, and certainty is magnetic. When not to explain. Let's be clear, this is not about arrogance. It's not about ignorance. It's about control. You should explain when teaching, mentoring, clarifying technical processes, but in power exchanges, in negotiations, in criticism, in challenges, over-explaining lowers leverage, especially when emotion is involved. If someone says, "I don't think this is a good decision," instead of, "Well, actually, if you look at," try, "I understand your concern." Pause. Let them continue. Most of the time, they will talk themselves to exhaustion, and exhaustion weakens opposition. The energy shift. The moment you stop explaining, something powerful happens internally. You feel discomfort because you're breaking a lifelong habit of seeking approval. But if you survive that discomfort, you discover a new state, calm authority. You realize you don't need everyone to agree. You don't need everyone to understand. You don't need everyone to validate. And that emotional independence radiates. People feel it. They respond to it. They respect it. The dangerous misinterpretation. Some people misunderstand this principle and become cold, dismissive, or arrogant. That is not power.
That is insecurity disguised as dominance. True strength is calm. It doesn't rush. It doesn't attack. It doesn't justify. It simply stands. And when needed, it speaks briefly, then stops. The final scene, for now. Months after the boardroom incident, Daniel changed his approach. Another meeting, another presentation, another challenge. This time, when Victor asked, "Why this direction?" Daniel replied, "It positions us ahead of the market." Silence. Victor waited. Daniel held eye contact. No additional explanation, no nervous laughter, no defensive posture, just presence. Victor nodded. Proceed. Power returned. Not because his strategy changed, but because his energy did. The brutal truth.
The brain does not respect logic. It detects power. Let's return to the boardroom, but this time slow the scene down. Victor asks, "Why this direction?" Daniel begins explaining. Before Daniel even finishes his second sentence, something has already happened, not in the room, but inside the brains of the people listening. Their nervous systems begin making micro-calculations. Is he stable? Is he certain? Is he leading? Or is he defending? This happens in milliseconds. And here's the brutal truth. Human beings evolved to detect emotional instability faster than they process information. We survived by reading dominance, not spreadsheets. Long before language, our ancestors survived by asking, "Is this person safe to follow? Is this person strong enough to protect us? Is this person confident or fearful?" Explanation triggers a subtle fear signal. Certainty triggers a safety signal, and the brain always chooses safety. The amygdala test. Inside the brain sits a small almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. Its job? Scan for threat. But threat doesn't only mean physical danger. It also means instability, weak leadership, social unpredictability. When someone over-explains, their voice changes slightly. Breathing shifts. Tone becomes defensive. Energy contracts. The amygdala of the listener picks this up instantly. And here's the critical insight. When your amygdala detects uncertainty in someone else, you unconsciously downgrade their authority. It's not personal, it's neurological. Authority is not granted logically, it is granted emotionally. The certainty bias. There is a well-documented cognitive bias known as the certainty effect. Humans prefer a confident wrong answer over a hesitant correct one. This is why charismatic leaders outperform intellectuals. Confident speakers attract followers. Politicians who speak boldly win over cautious experts. Certainty reduces cognitive load. When someone speaks with calm finality, the brain relaxes. When someone explains excessively, the brain works harder, and people subconsciously avoid mental strain. So they lean toward the person who makes decisions feel effortless, not the one who defends them endlessly. The subconscious hierarchy. In every room, a hierarchy forms within minutes. It is not announced, it is not voted on, it is felt. The hierarchy is built on 3 silent signals: emotional stability, verbal economy, and reaction control. Over-explaining damages all 3. Emotional stability weakens because explanation often carries defensive tone. Verbal economy disappears because authority compresses language, not expands it. Reaction control fades because explaining is often reactive. Now imagine 2 men. One responds to criticism with, "Let me explain why I did that." The other responds with, "That decision stands." Who feels higher in the hierarchy? The second one, even if he gives less information, because leadership energy is about direction,
not dialogue. The social predator instinct. There is something darker at play. Humans unconsciously test weakness. In social groups, people push boundaries to determine rank, not maliciously, instinctively. If someone questions you and you immediately rush to explain, you pass the test, but not in the way you think. You pass as someone who can be pressured, and once someone learns that you react, they will test you again and again and again. But if you respond calmly and briefly, then stop talking, something interesting happens. The pressure reverses. Now they feel exposed. Now they must justify their challenge. Now the dynamic shifts. Silence is not absence. It is strategic tension, and tension transfers power. The energy exchange law. Every interaction is an energy exchange. When someone attacks or questions you, they are projecting energy outward. If you respond by over-explaining, you absorb that energy and try to neutralize it. But powerful individuals redirect it. Example: you handled that poorly. Weak response: actually, I was under pressure and the timeline was unrealistic. And strong response: what specifically was poor? Short, calm, direct. Now the critic must provide clarity. You shifted the weight back. Over-explanation is emotional labor. Authority avoids unnecessary labor. The courtroom of Renaissance Florence. Centuries ago, political survival depended on perception. In the volatile world of Renaissance Florence, one misplaced word could destroy alliances. Leaders who defended themselves too eagerly appeared guilty, even if innocent. Those who remained composed appeared in control, even under threat. The lesson was brutal. In politics, explanation is often interpreted as weakness, and weakness invites attack. The powerful learned to master composure under accusation, not by arguing, but by controlling emotional tempo. When you speak less, others reveal more, and information is power. The psychology of scarcity in speech. Scarcity increases value. This applies to money, access, time, and words. When someone speaks constantly, their words lose weight. When someone speaks sparingly, each sentence feels heavier. Over-explaining floods the room with low-value language. Controlled brevity concentrates impact. Imagine a CEO who speaks for 2 hours in every meeting. Now imagine a CEO who speaks only 3 times and each sentence changes direction. Which one feels more powerful? Silence builds anticipation, and anticipation amplifies authority. Emotional self-sufficiency. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people explain themselves because they need emotional reassurance. They want, "I understand, that makes sense, you're right." They want harmony, but harmony is not always aligned with dominance. Powerful individuals are emotionally self-sufficient. They don't panic when misunderstood. They don't scramble when questioned. They allow misinterpretation to exist temporarily, because they trust outcomes more than approval. That emotional independence radiates, and people gravitate toward emotional anchors, not emotional negotiators. The mirror effect. People mirror confidence. If you appear uncertain, others question you. If you appear certain, others doubt themselves. This is why silence after a statement is so powerful. You make a decision, you state it, you stop. The other person's brain searches for cracks. When none appear, they begin questioning their own objection. Silence forces internal dialogue in others, and whoever controls the internal dialogue controls the outcome. When explaining becomes a habit. Many high achievers develop an explaining habit early in life. As children, they were asked, "Why did you do that? Explain yourself." Teachers demanded justification. Parents demanded reasoning. So they learned explanation equals safety. But adult power dynamics are different. In leadership spaces, constant explanation signals that you still seek parental approval, and leaders do not seek approval, they grant it. Breaking this habit feels uncomfortable at first. You feel rude, cold, dismissive, but you're not being rude. You're retraining your nervous system to tolerate silence, and silence tolerance equals authority tolerance. The internal battle. The real struggle isn't external, it's internal. When someone challenges you and you choose not to over-explain, your heart rate rises slightly. Your brain screams, "Say more, clarify, fix this." But if you breathe through that urge, something shifts. You feel grounded, stable, unmoved. And that internal stability becomes visible externally. Confidence is not loud. It is regulated. The power of the final word. In negotiations, the person who speaks last often feels dominant, but there is a deeper tactic. Say less and let them speak last, but end with silence, because silence is psychologically perceived as closure. If someone keeps talking after you have stopped, they feel like they are trying too hard, and trying too hard lowers perceived status. The reversal. Months after Daniel changed his behavior, something interesting happened. Victor challenged him again, but this time Daniel didn't react. He answered briefly, paused, held eye contact.